Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Thriving Thoughts. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri, and today we've got a message that I know is relevant to so many people out there. Today we're talking with my new friend, Craig Muckle. And Craig is learning to thrive alone, quote unquote alone, in a job search. He bravely comes on the show today to talk about something that probably a lot of men in particular aren't willing to share. And I think it's important to bring this perspective to the show. I know a lot of times we mostly talk to women on this show, but it's important to have the male perspective. And so this is for you. If you are a man or you know someone who is a man who is in transition between jobs, look, things look different right now, right? I've learned a few lessons from Craig in this episode, and one of those things that he's going to encourage you to do is that in your job search, you're going to question your identity, you're going to question your role, particularly maybe as provider, and there's a way to use that to thrive and to not forget to keep doing the fun stuff. Craig is a seasoned expert in communications and is currently looking for a role to serve in that capacity with possibly maybe even your company. So tune in, listen to what Craig has to offer, and most importantly, know that if you are in this job search, you are not as alone as you might think. Here's my conversation with Craig Muckle. Okay.
Thank you.
Craig, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm super excited to meet you, our mutual friend, well, your long-term friend, Coach Keith Howard introduced us. So I'm so grateful for the connection and just honored to share another story here on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Sherri. It's glad to be here. You know, Keith has been a great friend and resource, and, he brought me into an organization, really the chamber, in such a way that I never thought I would be immersed that way. And then we just shared a lot of things about ourselves and business and personal, and and he's been great. I've helped him out, when he was coaching football at Crossland High School. So it's just been a great partnership that we've had aside from the friendship.
I love that. He speaks very highly of you. So I couldn't wait to have you on the show. And you and I had the opportunity, Craig, to connect momentarily on the phone. And so I heard a little bit about your story, but I'm amped about our conversation today because I know what you are thriving alone in and have been learning to thrive alone in.
Yeah.
I know that you are not alone in that. And I know that there are people who need to hear your story. So I'm going to dive right in, Craig. The first question that I ask everybody here in season 4 is, tell us about a time, and even if that time is now, tell us about a time when you have felt alone.
Well, Sherri, when you told me that would be the first question, it really didn't take me that long to think about what I would say, because I am currently in the midst of that. I've been alone in a job search now since October of 2019. In fact, it was October the 10th of 2019 when I was my position at my previous employer, the Archdiocese of Washington, was eliminated. And I've worked for...
So you're going on 5 months now.
No, actually, it's more like 17 months.
Oh, I'm sorry. A year and 5 months. Because you said 2019.
Yes. I try. Wow. Yeah, I say wow myself. I can't wrap my head around the fact that it's been almost 18 months. And, the unfortunate thing is, this is not... I wish I could say that was my first time, or this is my first time in such a situation, but it's actually my third.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the length of time in between jobs has been longer. And I would say, without a doubt, that this is by far the most challenging, downtime without a job that I've had for a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. Number one, the pandemic has not made it better, certainly. Yeah. But to be honest with you, just the way some of the things I've encountered along the way in this search have really challenged, I guess I would say my sanity at times. And,
okay.
And really my ability to feel like, am I really a worthwhile person? And, and thankfully, I have a great support system. As I mentioned to you, my wife has been incredibly supportive. And in fact, I met my wife back shortly before really my first situation where I was out of a job for a period of time. I met her, we were dating, had just started dating, and I basically had said to her, I'm without a job. Are you gonna go? And she's like, what would I do that for? I'm here to support you.
Wow. From the beginning.
Yeah. And it was really through that I knew that she was going to be my life partner. And once I did get settled and got acclimated in that new job, we got engaged a few months later, and then we got married about 18 months after that. And we've been together, it'll be, 22 years this year in May.
Okay. Wow.
So,
wow. Well, happy early anniversary to you.
Thank you.
That's incredible. What a gift.
Yes.
So for the listeners, to better understand, Craig, because I've said this in every episode, but sometimes not everybody listens to every episode, and that's okay because they're listening to this one and they're watching this one if they're watching on the YouTube channel. But alone in a job search. Now, it's clear that you're not relationally alone.
Right.
Right. So I wonder if you could share with us, help us pinpoint what are the parts of you? When is the loneliness coming up for you? And you mentioned briefly about kind of your questioning your worth and maybe even your identity as a person, but and your value, your contribution. But tell us a little bit more about where that feeling of aloneness comes from in this job search, in this 17-month-long job search.
It comes from the fact that like I said, my wife's been supportive, and thankfully she has a great job as a realtor, so she's been able to support our family during that time. But it's knowing that she has something to do, to contribute to help people find homes. And look, I'm used to contributing to an organization. I've done that for nearly 35 years when I'm working, and I know I have a value. I know I'm good at what I've done, particularly when I consider I've been places like ESPN for 9 years. I was at BET for 5. I spent 18 years of my life at Safeway. Okay, so you don't stay in places like that for that amount of time if you're not at least reasonably successful and halfway good at what you do. And I'm not here to extol my virtues.
Probably more than halfway, right, Craig?
Well, I'm not here to necessarily extol my virtues, but I'll leave that for others to do. But the bottom line is, I don't think you survive in corporate America if you're, just kind of getting by doing your job.
Mediocre. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's depressing when you want to support your family as, a man should. Particularly an African-American man. I'll be perfectly honest with you, because I want to support my family, support our 3 kids, and, do what, a man is asked to do even when you're married, is that to be, certainly a contributor, not only, financially, but, emotionally as well. And, emotionally I'm there for everybody, I think. But I want to do my part in all aspects. And I just feel like that's really been what I struggle with at times, is that, especially when I get bad news in a job search, or I've been told that I'm not going to move forward, or I'm not even being considered. And it's the other part too, when you're used to having success, and you feel like you read a job description and you're certain you can do the job, and yet people are not seeing that in you, and it's very discouraging.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, what is a job search like? I'm going to ask you to cover a couple of different levels.
Sure.
So what's a job search like for someone who has significant experience, and based on what's available, and what's a job search look like in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, the job search normally would be where you're not only looking for jobs, but you're trying to engage with people, interpersonally, one-on-one, going to an office,
Yes.
going to a meeting place, whether it's a restaurant, a Starbucks, what have you, and just connecting with people, whether they're their colleagues, their associates in your career field. Mine would be communications or, government affairs, and letting them know, hey, I'm without a job. Who can you guide me to? And you're just having meetings all the time. Now, in the midst of a pandemic, everyone's on Zoom in interminable hours of almost every day. And so to ask someone to spend, even 15 minutes on a Zoom meeting as a courtesy gets to be a little more challenging. And I'm the kind of person who, I think, if I'm able to walk into the room and shake someone's hand and let them know who I am with the energy and enthusiasm, I think they can see that. You maybe lose a little bit of that on a computer screen. And so I think that's not been beneficial to me either. Especially,
well, we've all become these talking heads, right?
Yeah. Right.
and you really don't get the presence of the whole person.
No.
And I certainly I appreciate you saying that, because I think there's also been, at least in my experience, people have become habituated to Zoom to the point that, it's not that people didn't do this in person. They did, but now it's doubly worse, because when you're doing things via video, you really have to pay constant attention to be able to embrace all of the nuances of the communication of the conversation, right?
Right.
Where, as before, when we were in person, we might have been in a meeting and people might have had their, cell phones underneath the table, texting or whatever. But they were present, they were there, they were feeling, they were thinking. But now I've found that people have become so habituated to Zoom that they're doing that on Zoom. And so the robustness of communication is really not there anymore.
No, it's not. And it's really, even through this job search, I can tell you it's been a bit of an evolution. That one of the first jobs I interviewed for, they basically sent me a link and said they want me to tape my responses. I was like, ooh, okay, I wasn't ready for this. And so I was basically speaking to a computer. Imagine responding to basically my camera and getting no feedback. Because you're not talking to a person. You don't know who you're speaking to and that sort of thing. And I remember I was up in our spare bedroom. I think it was on my computer. I don't really remember, but all I remember was and they give you like a few takes to do this, but at some points, like how many takes are you going to be able to do without the benefit of feedback and someone kind of giving you a sense of, are my answers okay? Is that what you're looking for? Because you don't really know. And, so they let you review your answers. And then at some point you just say, okay, well, I think that's it. And look, I didn't move on. And I think there was a lesson to be learned there, because like I said, I was hunkered down in the corner of a room, and you could see the ceiling and that kind of thing.
Right.
It was just weird. And later on in the course of this journey to find a job, a former chamber member who was actually on my committee, I'll mention his name, Lindsey Ruffin, because it was great. He gave some great feedback about how to really adapt in this time now where we're doing all these virtual things. And he said, if you're going to interview, you have to be, you just can't have distractions. So that's why you see me today sitting in front of a green screen. And if I were to turn my camera on, you would see my lighting. And I have the microphone, as you saw, and everything like that, and this high definition camera. In the midst, he gave a presentation to a group that I'm involved with, 40 plus in Greater Washington. And they provide career transition services for people like myself. I'm actually a graduate and alumni of the service. I took the service back in 2016. It's a very valuable service, so I can make that quick plug. And they help people like myself. And so he did a session on this. And in the middle of the session, during the session, I was on Amazon ordering all the equipment I'm using right now.
Right.
Because I said, that's me. I said, I don't want that distraction,
Yes.
And so it's been helpful. And my wife has been able to use all this stuff. And look,
Sure.
you have to adapt because he was right.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you want to make it as easy as possible for the interviewer to speak
Yes.
to you, to focus only on you, not about something behind you. Because I think we can all relate. If you're watching any of the TV networks, CNN or whatever, I think a lot of us probably watch that. You probably look and say, "Oh, gee, that's interesting what they're reading back there."
Right. Yeah.
And I certainly don't want to, someone who's interviewing me, be more interested in the artwork that's behind me or something like that versus hearing me.
Right. No, that's good. So there's technological challenges.
Yes.
For sure.
Right.
In the midst of a pandemic. Now let's get more, I don't know, just global traditional job search issues. What are the barriers? The questions that come to my mind, Craig, are the types of positions that you are gifted for and desiring of, are they available? One, so are there barriers on that end? And two, are there barriers on the, the process end, or even, getting from, okay, that job looks great, to all of what goes in between to actually being offered a position.
Sure.
So if you could share with us a little bit about what those barriers have been for you this third time around.
Absolutely. Well, let me start with the pandemic piece of it first, because that does play a bit of a role, but I'm happy to say it didn't play as integral a role as I thought it would a year ago. And I say that because basically we go into the pandemic and the jobs that were on all the job boards pretty much went away because life almost stopped. And the state of Maryland requires you as part of your unemployment to apply for 3 jobs a week. And you have to chronicle this. You basically have to say, these are who you applied for, what were your contacts. And it could be any level, not necessarily apply, but you have to do something to that end, whether make a connection, have a conversation, maybe schedule something, whatever the case may be. And when the state of Maryland said, well, you don't have to do that anymore because essentially there were no jobs to do that for, then, that was one aspect. And ultimately, it really seemed to be only about maybe 60 to 75 days where their site was really down to that degree. It's back up now, and there's plenty of opportunities.
So there was a big stutter at the beginning. And
for someone like myself, I was really afraid, am I going to be out of work in 2021? Little did I know I would still be out of work regardless, unfortunately. But that was the big concern then. But now, kind of later down the line, there are jobs available, and there have been a multitude of jobs available. But what I have found is the only thing I could really deem it in a lot of ways has been unprofessional, because we as job seekers are expected to be polite, be courteous, be respectful, and because obviously we want something that a prospective employer has, which is an opportunity to be employed. But yet that is not reciprocated when it comes to communication. You can, and I don't necessarily mean simply that, hey, thanks for applying, we'll contact you, when we've narrowed it down. I'm talking about you've actually been interviewed by people, going through the interview process, and have been told, well, this is the process, and we will touch base as we move forward. And then in more than one instance, I've been in an interview and heard nothing back until I get an email that says, oh, we hired somebody. So you don't even know when, you missed the cut, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Now, do you think that is, do you think that's been an issue, and maybe a building issue over the last, few years? As, in other words, it sounds like the impersonalization of the interview process, as opposed to maybe years ago when it really was, you get hired based on relationship, just like getting to know people.
You know, it may have been building. I'll say this: I did not see that in 2016.
Okay.
So that's only, at the time it was only 3.5 years or three
Sure.
really. So I didn't really see that then at all. I did not have that kind of treatment. And I'll go so far to say I've had it happen where I've had direct referrals from people say, hey, I know someone who's looking for this person, for a person that's trying to do X, Y, or Z. Contact them. I did. We had a conversation, and basically you're ghosted. You hear nothing, even though, you may have sent in information that you were asked to send in, whatever, on time, and it's been received, and then you basically ghosted out. That's been insanely frustrating, and it's happened more than once.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Craig. Let's talk about that frustration. I imagine that's probably been a mild way to describe what you've felt at times in this job search journey.
Yes.
But when we do feel frustrated like that, we do also have a tendency to think, gosh, what is does anybody else see what's happening here? Like having that sense of aloneness there too. So what have you learned about yourself and when it comes to frustration and when it comes to this just being miffed by the fact that you just said a few minutes ago, surely I won't be unemployed in 2021, right?
Yeah.
And here I am.
Well, I think part of the reason I like 40 plus is that you're with other people who are traveling the road with you. And we can share these frustrations, and hopefully we can lift others up. And, look, I cried on my wife's shoulder a couple months ago. I just couldn't take it. And it was, so there are just times when it is overwhelming. I mean, I'm starting to feel.
And it's very humbling.
Yeah, it is. I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed just thinking about it right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And, but, you just try to find other people to talk to share. And I think I have found that to be very helpful for those that are going to listen, because really you can't really keep it inside you. And I personally have a lot of outlets. When I'm not working, well, it's an avocation. So I referee basketball.
Okay.
So my alter ego on Keith's podcast is super referee Craig Muckle.
Okay.
So
I love it.
Yeah. But I only referee basketball. But then I'm also, my wife and I and two of our three kids are competitive bowlers. So,
okay. Wow.
Yeah. So
I've never met a competitive bowler.
Well, if you're around now you have, yes. I just bowled in the tournament on Saturday, in fact. I had league last night. So
that hits on something really, really, really important that I think people overlook, because when you're on this type of journey, this job search, and you have these identifying beliefs and responsibilities as a man, as a husband, to provide. Let me ask you this. Did you have moments where you felt guilty for doing stuff that was fun?
No, not at all.
Good.
No.
Okay. Tell us why.
Because it was time. I knew that, especially when the pandemic, I knew time is such a rare commodity that we were given. As bad as the pandemic is, I immediately recognized there's an opportunity to recapture time that we would not ordinarily have. And so, some of the things we did, and we're actually going to do it again. But last year, we took an RV vacation. We went camping.
Wow.
And,
nice.
And we're doing it again. It was awesome. And it was. Did
you just do like one of those, you like rent an RV and.
Yes, we rented an RV, and it was fantastic. We went to Lake George. I'm a native New Englander, but my wife is a native Baltimorean, so she had never been to upstate New York, and our kids had not been, and they loved it. They want to go, we want to do it again. I'm already looking for that, to do that again this year. And, I would tell anyone, RVing is a great way. And, we did it largely to avoid the crowds, frankly, having to go to a hotel, having to be on a plane, go to a lot of restaurants. But it was a great way to vacation. I would advocate it for anybody. And
see, I love that you're embracing that, because I think a lot of people, they think if I just, work harder, move faster, keep doing, that then they will not be in this maybe, jobless situation. But the truth is that in order to be prepared, in order to be fit, to present yourself as qualified, you have to take care of yourself. And that means engaging in the fun stuff too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so that's why, the bowling is important for us. And I coach the league that I'm one of the coaches in the league that our kids participate in.
Okay.
As I said, I referee basketball. There were not many games to officiate this year. I only actually refereed 2 games, 2 real high school games this year.
Yeah.
But I'm also, I've done volunteer work. I'm still doing the work for 40 Plus. I'm helping them with communications. I'm doing some other communications work for a former colleague and a friend of mine. In fact, right before I joined you, I was on a call with that team just talking about some publicity opportunities and things like that. And my wife was the president of the Realtors Association last year. Her term, she's still on the board. She's just not the board president right now.
Okay.
But I was helping them with some of their communications pieces. Like I was, editing some of their things and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to stay active, professional, in the professional realm, but I'm also taking advantage of, the time that I have. And, when you go through these things, you learn so much, because when I was let go from Safeway back in 2016, I came home early. And I walked in the door, and I wasn't ready for the question that one of my kids asked was, "How come you're home so early?" And so I lied to them. I told them I took the rest of the day off. By the end of the week, I had to tell them the truth, because it wasn't, I felt bad in doing that. So, you make decisions that are not necessarily the best ones, just because you're kind of dealing with your own emotions and stuff like that.
Yes.
And what made that even more telling is that as a spokesperson for companies, you're oftentimes having to answer a question that you may or may not be ready for. And oftentimes it's a question you're not ready for that you can give the most dramatic answer for. So you really have to be thoughtful in those responses. And I just felt like the fact that I didn't tell my kids the truth at that moment wasn't, the best. But I've learned, you learn about yourself, you learn about your family.
Yes.
And my daughter, who's one of our oldest daughter, who's in college, she had asked me during one of these searches, I think it was probably the one with Safeway. Going back, she said, she went to a Christian high school. Her sister is there now, and she said, "Well, Daddy, I hope you don't mind, but I asked, they were looking for prayer requests, so I asked." The class leader pray for my dad who's looking for a job.
Wow. Yeah. That is really powerful, because as a parent, you want to be the one that's on the praying end, the fixing end, and to have your child come to you and say that is, but wow, that's really beautiful.
Yeah. It's still, it meant a lot for her to even offer that.
Yeah. So I want to dive in more to what you've learned about yourself, but I want to backtrack for a second and ask if you'd be willing to share with us 2 things. One, what makes this job search, what makes this period, you said this is the 3rd one, what makes this different? Like, why is this one different, or how is it different from times 1 and 2? And then a follow-up question to that would be, what are some of the fears that you've had in this job search that you have not had in past ones?
Well, I think what's made this challenging is that I think there's just so many more people out of work.
Okay.
Because of the times we're in with the pandemic. So many people have lost jobs. So it's, as competitive as the job market typically is, I think it's even more.
Got it.
And I think there's a lot of there's still probably a lot of tension around the social and racial inequities we've seen, and I think companies are struggling with that. And I'd like to think there's an opportunity for me to help there, but I haven't quite seen it. Although I've tried to position myself in such a way that I think that's something that I know that's something I could help companies with. In fact, and you do different things. When you've been out of work over a year, nothing's off the table. So I've read magazines or journals like the Washington Business Journal, and they've been talking about this subject of how businesses are coping and trying to advance that within the organizations. And one Friday night, I basically sent the email to a local CEO and basically lobbied for a job because I thought there was an opportunity there. And having worked with many CEOs directly, I knew that he probably would be checking his email on a Saturday morning. So I sent it at like 12 midnight on a Friday night. And by 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, he had responded.
Oh, my goodness.
And it wasn't the answer I had hoped for, but the fact that he took the time.
But it was engagement.
Yes, it was. And I did lob back. I mean, I did try to, I was a little persistent, I guess I would say.
That's good.
But I thought there was an opportunity there. And so, look, I made my case. And, I still think I could help him. But, so as I see it, there's nothing really off the table. And I think.
So you're being open.
I am. I mean, I'm trying to talk to as many people as possible. I've had a lot of, I did a marketing plan. I shared it with some colleagues I work with on, like I said, local boards I'm on. So they've had some ideas, and I followed up on those. And then I had a longtime friend of Keith and ours, Keith and mine, my wife's as well, follow up with and say, hey, I didn't know you were looking for a job. And so he's offered to get involved. So,
great.
Yeah. And so, look, I try to remain prayerful and confident that something will fall my way. I did have an interview this week, and it did seem to go well. But, unfortunately, when you think it goes well, you just try to temper your enthusiasm because I've been disappointed before. And I just want to not get so high that if it doesn't work out, then I don't want to hit with a thud again.
So let me ask you about that, because one of the beliefs that I have and that I've learned to apply to my own life is I've really learned to celebrate, not in a kazoo, balloon, confetti sort of way, but I've learned to celebrate the no's and the doors closed, because I've learned to recognize those as actual protections as opposed to rejections.
Right.
That's how I look at that. Is as a protection. And so my question is, what has your growth journey been during this 17-month period? In what ways have you grown as a person through those waves of disappointment?
Well, I think you just have to understand that it's not about, you can't let your worth be diminished.
Yes.
Because if I were to let my worth be diminished, then I think I would not be helpful to my family, my wife, and those that actually are still relying upon me, to help, to fulfill the responsibilities I have there. So, that's part of it. Number two, I think I learned this as well by just being willing to talk about it. I think helps other people, because I had some of our, family members, particularly some of the men in our family. The last time we were able to gather for Thanksgiving, which was back in 2019, right after I lost this job, I mentioned to him that I'm without a job again, and one of the cousins said, I just appreciate the fact that you're able to be that open about it, because, it would be hard as a man to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that leads into something that I wanted to ask you about, Craig. Go ahead and finish your thought.
So I just think that you never know who you're going to help
Yes.
by, being open and honest about it. So I've learned that
Yeah.
regardless of that, I'm just going to talk about it because it may help myself. It'll definitely help myself, and it may help someone else.
And that is the whole reason why I, asked you to be on the show, because there's somebody listening right now. They need to hear this. They need that encouragement. And so, let me ask you about the voices in your life during this time. Would you share with us, have there been naysayers? Have there been discouraging voices in your life during this time? And things that people have said that have kind of stuck in your mind in not so great a way. And tell us about the encouraging voices, maybe like your cousin who said, thank you for sharing that.
Well, thankfully, I've had a lot of encouraging voices. Lots, my mom, my brother, as I said, my immediate family right here, stuff like that, as well as, other people who are on those boards that I've sit on, the folks at 40 plus who are encouraging and stuff like that. So, thankfully, I have a great support system. I can't really complain about that. And honestly, I'm sure there's been some things that have been discouraging, but I think all that is drowned out back to the point that I can't really remember.
I love it. I love it. Now, there's a reason that I'm asking, because you have purposefully created and pursued and clearly have had a long history of being dedicated to the importance of establishing and maintaining your support system.
Yeah.
Like that just sounds like that's inherently who you are, that connection. So there are a lot of people who may find themselves in a similar without a job situation as you right now, and they do not have a good support system.
Right.
What do you think it is they need to hear right now in that place where maybe they actually have a lot of naysayers?
Well, the first thing I would tell them is, look, I know it feels alone, especially when you're sitting at home walking the dog and, you see everyone else going to work and you're not doing that. So there are other people in your situation who, are going through it as well. And, with the great thing about the internet, there's groups like 40 Plus and other organizations that are doing the work of bringing job seekers together where they can share the trials and tribulations of a job search, and hopefully just through those conversations that you can find something. Then we have LinkedIn and other positive social media tools that you can connect with people, whether it's people like yourself or people in other your industry of your career that you can engage with and maybe exchange some ideas, exchange some thoughts. And you never know what will come from a random spontaneous conversation.
Yeah. So get involved, reach out. Maybe we'll even include, if there is one, Craig, we'll include a link for the 40 Plus of Greater Washington here in the show notes. And then perhaps I'll be able to find some others for other geographic locations as well, because we have listeners all over.
Sure.
But thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important. My last question is twofold, I guess. It goes back to something that you said, that when you're on an interview, you want to, for lack of a better phrase, make a good impression, right? You want to leave a favorable impression on the people who you're seeking a job from. So I would add to that, and you strike me as somebody who definitely has this level of confidence that an employer-employee relationship or interviewee relationship is a goodness of fit conversation for both parties.
Yes. Right.
So I wonder, with that in mind, for you, how have you then allowed yourself, what have you learned about yourself in terms of staying confident, not, grab bagging it, staying selective about what you want and where you want to serve and where you want to leave an impact? Like, have you had temptations to go against that?
Yeah. I mean, especially when you're out of work for a year and a half, because,
Yeah.
my biggest fear really is, will this force me to make a transition I don't want to make or I didn't expect to make? I don't, I don't like to be dictated like that. I kind of like to be, I think most people want to step aside at the time that they wish to step aside. I just feel like there are choices being made by other people that might lead me down that path. And I'm determined not to try to do that.
That you're determined. Let me make sure I heard you correctly. That you.
I don't want to lose.
Just say.
Yeah, I basically want to stay as a communications professional until the time, until such time I make the choice, not someone's making the choice for me because they don't want to hire me doing something.
So my question to you would be, and I'm totally putting you on the spot here, like we're the only two people in a room, even though we're airing this. What if this is an opportunity to not be where you think you should be?
Well, look, you don't know what you don't know, I guess.
That's right.
And so I don't think I'm going to have a good answer for that question. Uh-huh. And I hate to tell you that because as a spokesperson, you like to try to answer the question, even if it's your answer and not the question is not the answer that the interviewer is hoping to get. But
well, I'm not hoping to get one, but it's a question. And here's why I ask it, because back at the beginning of this pandemic, I did a podcast episode. And I said, because this was when everybody was like, oh, I just want to go back to normal. I just want to go back to normal. This was before we even realized the extent of change that would take place. Mm-hmm. And people were already wishing things back to normal. And my question on that podcast, and everybody has to answer it in their own time, but my question was, what if this is it? What if it stays this way? What if there is no return to normal? And so people were highly frustrated with that question with me because I don't have an answer for you. I have an answer for myself, but my answer for myself is not an answer for you. And so that's why, that's where that question came from.
Got it. Yeah. And look, I think we'll be out of the pandemic, at some reasonable time. And so, once we get past it, I think everyone else's thought process will come together. But right now I'm still focused on being a communications executive.
Okay, I love it. So let's go there. You have a platform right now here on my show, and I'm a firm believer that every opportunity is an opportunity, and this conversation is an opportunity because it's evergreen, and we don't know whose ears it's going to fall upon. So this is your stage, sir. Who are you? Like, what gifts do you have to offer? Who are you looking for? Because somebody listening may be that person, or they might know that person.
Well, I'm a career communications professional. I've worked at ESPN, BET, Rite Aid, Safeway, and the Archdiocese of Washington, handling, crisis communications, government affairs, public relations, and event planning, among a lot of other things. And I really am seeking a senior level opportunity to lead an organization, run a department, and really be a thought leader in the organization to really make a difference. And if I have an opportunity to do that around social justice or DEI initiatives, that's even better, because that's been such an important situation that's occurred over the last year. But people are focused on it now, although it's been a historical problem going back hundreds of years. But it's one that, for myself as well, it's been personal in recent times. And I'd like to help an organization walk that journey as well. So
now, do you have a preference for nonprofit or for-profit?
Neither. I don't really care.
Okay.
I just want an opportunity to be employed.
Yeah.
And make a contribution in a tangible way.
Yes. Okay, listeners, you heard it here first. Get this guy, Craig Muckle. You don't want to let him pass you by, and have a conversation with him. I think it's time to get creative. Like, can we just meet in a park and sit 6 feet apart and have a conversation? That's right. This is where my mind is going. In terms of employers, if I was looking for somebody, I would still want to meet them in person as opposed to just via Zoom.
Right. Absolutely. So,
yeah.
Look, I'm happy to do whatever it takes to get a job. I mean, I know people don't want to meet in person. And so I'm fully respectful of that. But, if we have to deal with it this way, then so be it. We will do that. Right. And we will make the best of it. We made the best of it this long. And I'd like to think we're going to persevere until whenever the end is going to be.
Yes. So, Craig, somebody is listening and they want to chat with you, at least have a conversation. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So, is email okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So, I have a couple of email addresses. So, my alter ego email, is what I call it, is bowlingref@live.com. That's BOWLINGREF as in Frank @live.com.
Okay.
Or one that's a little more normal, I guess, at C Muckle, MUCKLE, the number 4 Bowie @gmail.com. And the reason for that email is about 5 years ago, I ran for elective office here in the city of Bowie, Maryland, where we live.
Okay.
So, yeah. And,
love it.
And I'm also on LinkedIn at Craig M. Muckle.
Okay.
Twitter at the same handle, and Facebook.
Okay. Wonderful. Craig, I have 2 questions. We'll include, by the way, all of those links in the show notes so that people can just click on them.
Great.
Couple of questions as we close out. If you had to pick one thing that you've learned about yourself as a person that's helped you to grow during this process, what would that be?
One thing that's helped me grow as a person, just, to be transparent. I mean, I think I've been that person before, but a lot of times your pride gets in the way. And
okay.
Like I said, I referenced it earlier when I was let go from Safeway. I came home and told my kids, I left the office early.
Yeah.
That wasn't being transparent.
Yeah.
But I was embarrassed, and I didn't want them to be let down. And so, when I had to come back and tell them, hey, wait, I didn't tell the truth, that's not what you want to really teach your kids.
Yeah.
But, we want everyone in our lives to be proud. And so, because, I told my wife the truth, but I didn't tell them the truth. And she's like, you shouldn't have done that. I'm like, I know. And then it was corrected a few days later,
yeah. So, but that's really a good nugget to learn, because pride is, that's the thing that gets between us and success in so many instances.
Yes, absolutely.
Is just that. But it also sounds like for you, you're embracing. You have embraced, not just learn to, like people say, swallow your pride, but you're embracing the transparency, and in so doing, you're being an encouragement to other people.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think so. And look, and it's easier said than done, because I sat on chamber Zoom meetings for a number of months before I basically made, those appeals to the board members that I was looking for a job. I mean, I talked to some privately, but not really in a collective sense, because I thought I could do it myself. And that's the other thing, you need help in these, because you're not going to be able to find all the answers yourself, find all the solutions yourself. So, whatever network you have, you should utilize it, because you never know who's actually been through it. I had someone tell me that the reason that she tried to be helpful is because she had been through it. Now, I didn't know that, but she said, I made a point of saying, I've been through it before, I know what it's like, and I made a point to say, when someone is going through it, I'm going to try to be helpful in any way I can.
For the listeners and viewers today who are impacted right now, who are in that in-between space of looking for a position, a careered position, and that you're finding yourself unemployed, I really love Craig's words of, you can't let that in-between space be the thing that determines your worth. Don't believe the lie that you aren't doing your part, that you aren't contributing, and keep doing the fun stuff. I connected with Craig briefly after our conversation, and one of the things he clarified was that when you're in a place like this, and this could be any space of feeling alone, but if you're in a space of thriving alone, feeling alone, in a job search, that you really aren't as alone as you think you are. And I love how he generously offers this resource. If you are in the greater Washington, D.C. metro area, check out this group, 40 Plus of Greater Washington. The links are in the show notes for you, but there's a space for you. There's a group of people who know, and most importantly, reach out. Don't keep it to yourself. The more transparent you are about what you are going through and what you're feeling alone in, that's your opportunity to reach out to somebody else and help them to not feel so alone. So let's create that ripple effect, and let's teach others that even if we're feeling alone, we can use that to thrive, to grow, flourish, and prosper. As always, I invite you to be a part of my Thriving Thoughts texting community. All you need to do is text the word THRIVE, THRIVE, to 540-369-2139, and you'll hear from me 3 times a week, and you'll get shareable images, and you can respond to me, and I respond back to you. It's not a one-way street of communication. It's my intimate circle, so I'd love for you to be a part of that. And hey, if you're an Apple Podcast user, would you please do me the honor of rating the show 5 stars and perhaps writing a 1 or 2 sentence honest review to help this show reach the audience it needs to reach, to help people understand that it's possible, yes, it's possible, when we speak truth over the lies, to thrive in any and every circumstance.